You guys got a packet. Perfect. You guys got a packet last night. For those of you that aren't live in the office with us, it's basically just a copy of the RPA. So if you don't have that with you right now, or if you didn't get a copy of it or you don't have it, just pull up any RPA and you can go along with us. I'm going to get into some things today to just kind of show you guys a couple things that I've been seeing in Sky Slope as we're checking your files where you guys might be leaving yourself a little exposed. So take some notes. Yeah, Craig, would you mind grabbing a couple of those for us? I think grab a couple pens. I think it would be good for everybody. You guys take some notes today. And what I'm hoping you'll have at the end of the day is a little cheat sheet that you can use to kind of guide you as you're writing offers, and based on what we're doing in today's market. So let's just get started with some introductions. First off, we're very lucky we have live in the office with us Robin Warman. So one of the rules, the first rule I have to tell you guys is if you're going to speak, you have to have the microphone in your hand. So Robin, thank you for joining us. Okay. Go ahead and say hi to everybody. Thank you for being here live. I appreciate it. Wait a minute. Hold on one second. Can you guys hear her?
Can anybody hear me? Hello?
There we go. Now,
Hello?
go ahead.
Do I need now? Oh, there we go. Okay, so effective May 1st, we're an independent escrow company, so which is really terrific and great news. So I just want to announce that. That's why I'm pretty much here, and to say hi to everybody and know that when you write in an offer now for Joshua Tree Escrow, it's just JTE Escrow, JTE. So we just shortened it. We had to change the name. We couldn't keep Joshua Tree Escrow because of the broker, ownership. We had to separate that completely. So now I'm a complete independent, which means to everybody that I can do bulk sales. I could liquor license, commercial, pretty much anything now, and take outside business, which I do have a following as well. So I'll be able to bring that business into my workload. So still enjoy working with everybody. So just write us in the offer as JTE. That's it. We're formerly known as Joshua Tree Escrow, and looking forward to working with everybody. Wonderful. And I really wanted to hear this going on too. This is a really big issue with everybody. So
yes, it is.
So it's an interesting topic as well.
Right. So I do want to just mention to everybody the big benefit to us for having Joshua Tree Escrow go independent. I just had this last year a transaction that was last year, a transaction where the buyer, the person who wanted to purchase my listing, wanted to do a 1031 exchange and wanted concurrent closings and wanted all they was all 1031s all the way through, and they wanted it all done together. And unfortunately, our escrow company at the time couldn't accept an escrow that didn't have a BHG agent as a party to, or as a representative in the contract. And so we weren't able to do that transaction. We lost that business. The good news is now we can take that business. And we also know, I know I've had several instances where agents were going to fight us on who the escrow officer was, and they found out it was Robin and they were fine with it. So I think I'm excited that I know that's going to be a big opportunity for us to do a lot more business. It's going to be a big opportunity for us to keep the business in-house. I have had a couple agents make some comments to me that I'm always asking for the business, and I am never going to stop. You guys have to understand that. We don't operate without escrow. We still, even though it's independent, we still need escrow in order for this to work. So if you guys have any questions or want to know what need, or I guess the way I want to say this is I want to know what you guys need in order for us to earn the business. And so whatever that need is, it can start with a conversation with Robin, but it can also start with a conversation with me or John about what your needs are, and let's figure out how we can get it done. Robin's not just a one-person show. We're still a team, and we still have ways to work together to be able to get the job done. So if you have specific escrow needs, please share them with us. Tell us what the things are that you want in order for us to win your business, because it makes everyone's life so much easier when you guys call me at 4:45 on a Friday I can't, if the escrow officer's in LA, I'm not going to be able to help you. I can almost guarantee you that I won't be able to help you. But if the escrow officer's Robin, I promise you that I'll have a response for you before 5 o'clock, right? Like, even if it's that we'll get back to you in just a few more minutes, we're able to have so much more control over the transaction. And aside from that, you guys know we have very generous margins and they make it very slim for us. And so we need the business. So we appreciate it, but I don't want you to feel like we're just asking for it without asking for the opportunity to earn it. Let us know what you need and we will make it happen. I know Robin will. She's done a great job, especially on at least the last few that I've dealt with her. Like, everything's been wonderful and has gone really well. So let us know if you've got challenges. Let us know up front. Let her know up front. Get those pre-escrows open because that really makes all the difference in the world. Yeah. Right. Oh, Jeff, unmute her. Jeff, unmute her. Yeah, 1 second.
Stand up. Yeah.
There you go. Go
Can you
ahead.
hear me? So at any rate, so that's my, the background is I've been doing this a long time. So there's pretty much every escrow that I have not touched at some point or come across some problem. So anytime, even if you just need to call me, I mean, I know Craig does. Well, he, even on an escrow that he couldn't give me because of the other services, he needed my advice and made it very clear that he did try to use me, but he needed some information on his escrow. And I'm perfectly happy to help him with that. And
I probably told him to call you.
you probably, if you did, then that's okay. Cause Craig knows anybody can always call me. I'm always available. I always answer my calls. And so I do want to make that clear. So I'm really going to work hard for it. We give customer service is everything that we can get, and always come to me with your concerns. My team is going to get larger. I do plan on opening an office here on El Paseo, and I do want to. I'm opening up an office in Yucca Valley. So that's coming in the future.
Wonderful.
So there'll be other officers under my team, that you
whose names you will know.
Well, yeah, they're not known yet.
We can't say it yet, but you will
become known. And so that's really cool. So I'm really excited and can't wait to get this venture going and help you guys.
Yay.
So that's all it is just helping everybody.
We're very excited about it. Very excited about it. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. Let's see. Who else do I have on the call today with us? I know I saw Catherine. Catherine, do you want to say anything to us? You want to say hi?
Of course, and thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm so sorry I am not there in person. Hopefully you can all hear me. My son has the ick and I decided keeping the germs at home was best. So I'm very sorry. That. Yes, of course. Hopefully he's rounding the corner because having a sick child is no fun. That being said, I did want to bring your attention to something on the heels of the contract changing and obviously what you're going to be going over today, something that First American is doing that I want to extend an invitation to all of you. It happens to be at the Palm Springs board on May 1st, but I wanted to share a quick couple statistics with you that I think is important because obviously the buyer demographic and profile is an ever-changing moving target. NAR came out with these statistics, so it happens to be that our talk and our seminar that we're going to be putting on is quite timely. Buyers by generation, starting as of July of 2022 through June 2023, the millennials are now 38% of your buyer profile. Baby boomers, 31%, Gen Xers, 24%, silent generation, 4%, and Gen Zers are at 3%. What's neat about what we're doing on May 1st is we have part of our team coming, and they are going to be speaking about how the generational differences affect the real estate closing and also how you communicate with these buyers. So that will be key. And I will be happy to share a flyer with you, but it's open to everyone. It's May 1st from 2 to 3:30. And we would really love for you guys to join us because I think you'll learn some wonderful nuggets. That's it.
What is the cost for non-GPSR members?
Steph, that's a great question. And we really didn't ask that question. We're just having it and we'll have to run that by Robin because it's a no cost event. So I'll find out if there's a cost to non-GS
They
members.
generally make it minimal. So just
Do
be
they?
prepared. You might need to have a little cash on you if you're not a
Okay,
GPSR
and
member.
I will let you know, for those of you who are not, if there is a cost associated with walking in the door, we will make sure that that is noted for all of you. But we hope you'll mark your calendars, because I think there'll be some, and it will not be hybrid. I'm sorry, as Steph acknowledged, it's very difficult. So it is in person, it's live. We want your bodies in there. And again, I think there'll be some really wonderful takeaways.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Okay,
guys.
great. Thank you. I don't see anyone else other than maybe John. Do you have anything you want to share? You can just nod your head if it's a no. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay. So you want to remute that for me? Thank you. Perfect. Okay, great. So let's get started. Oh, I do want to go over, let me just share screen real quick. I want to give you guys the desert housing report update real quick. Yeah, that's not what I wanted. It's like I forget what I'm doing all of a sudden when I'm not in my space. It's just a purchase. You didn't get it's the email from the invite yesterday. It had it attached to it. But let me get the desert housing. There we go. Okay, desert housing report. And if not, I can email it to you if you don't see it, if you don't find it from yesterday. It would have been at the end of the day, like after 3 o'clock. Okay, so desert housing report. I just wanted to give you guys a couple little pieces of information that, again, you guys know I love this chart. This is really good news, and I can tell it's indicative of the phone calls I'm getting. I think last week, I probably want to say I took maybe 5 to 10 calls a day of I have just a quick question. I'm writing a contract or I'm meeting a client, and those are wonderful calls. Like I don't mind those at all. I think those are wonderful, but I also started to recognize that there's a little bit of maybe some shakiness in how long it's been since we've written a contract or a listing agreement. And so, or how long it's been since we've been in the practice of doing it often. And so I know you guys are doing it more and some things have changed. That's why we're going to have some of the conversation that we've had. But I think this is a really good indication of sort of where we're at in the market. I know things are starting to come back because I'm seeing it in the files and I'm hearing it in your questions. So that's all good news. A couple other real brief things I just want to go over. Median home price of a detached home is 700,000 right now. It was exactly 700,000 as of April 1st. It is up 2.2% year over year, which is interesting because on average, we generally say 3% appreciation year over year. To see 2.2 is less, but this is exactly what we told people was going to happen. That things may slow, but prices will still increase. And that's exactly what they've continued to do. It slowed this year. In Palm Springs, there were years where you were having year over year with 18%, 23%, 15% appreciation. And now we're kind of getting back to a little bit of a norm. It may still feel slow, but it really is getting back to a norm. This is a little lower than where it should be, but it's still a good sign. For attached homes, that number is exactly 500,000. And it's up 8.7% year over year. So if you bought a condo last year, chances are you did a lot better with your equity growth than you did if you bought a single family residence. That was not the case year before that. We watched that change a little bit. So it's always very interesting. You see those increases in the condo market when your residential sales are either dwindling when you don't have enough inventory, and then people, because they can't get that single family home, they'll go over and get the detached home. You'll start to see that market slow when the inventory on single family properties starts to come up. So that's one of those little indicators that you can watch to see what's going to happen. The next thing I wanted to share with you was sales. The cities with the largest sales increases were Indian Wells and Palm Springs. I think that's pretty indicative of what's going on because we had such a big decrease in Palm Springs because prices had come up so much in that city that now they're starting to come back faster than any of the others. I'm not exactly sure why in Indian Wells, but it could be something similar to that. I don't know. They just have lower number of sales, so maybe the ratios different. I didn't take a look at that. With inventory, let me get to this slide. With the housing inventory, the best news I have for you that I've had for you on this report in forever, as of April 1st, the inventory was 22,450 homes, almost 2,500 homes. That is the highest number since June of 2020. And it's still below 500 to 1,000 below our historic norms. And the month of sales is at 3.9. Last year it was at 3.1. Days on market, Coachella Valley wide is 42 days, and 14% of homes are selling over asking price. So just some stats to throw at you really quickly. All of that is in the Desert Housing Report, which you all get either from GPSR or CDAR, but I will include it with the recording of this meeting afterwards. You guys know I always love to share some of those little stats and give you some of that information just so you're armed with the latest info when you go out on your appointments. But all that stuff's in the Desert Housing Report. If any of you are ever interested in learning how to read the report so that you can use a page here and there with a client, I'm happy to sit down and go over it with you. We may also do a class on that. If let me know if you guys want that. If you want that content, I will do a class on that, and we'll just do that individual where we just go through the Desert Housing Report and maybe take like an hour, hour and a half with the lunch and learn. Let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in. Okay, so let's get into the topic. Like I said, you guys are writing more purchase agreements, but I'm seeing more challenges, and I'm seeing more people that either don't really know or forgot how to write a purchase agreement or forgot how to use it properly, right? And you guys, I always say, you always hear me say that our number one job as a real estate agent is to secure our clients' rights through the contracts that we write, right? And so the RPA is the biggest tool you have in you and guiding your client through being able to have a successful transaction, or guiding your client through being able to get out of an unsuccessful transaction. And all of those things are important. So I kind of want to go through a few things with you today. If you've got the RPA in front of you, did you find it, Jeff? Okay, perfect. Do you want to share screen and put it up on the screen so we can kind of just follow along? That way, when I scream out a paragraph or a section, you guys will be able to find it pretty quickly. Okay, so one of the first things I wanted to just note is in section 1, the APN. A lot of people are leaving the APN off. Please don't do that. We need the APN. I can tell you a story. It's going to make me sound like I'm archaic, but I can tell you a story about an agent that sold the wrong house because the APN number was wrong. So just please make sure that you check the APN, double check through title, have that conversation. The question somebody asked me was, do I have to check it every time? Every time you want to be sure it's right. Right? And so just be aware of that. And include all of the APNs. That was a comment from Robin. Yep. If there's more than one APN, then you need to make sure all of them are included. If you can't put it in this section, then add an addendum with the additional APNs, or even in other, like there's some other terms places where you can put it in. That's a really good point. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to go down. The next section, agency, section 2. We've got in here the seller's brokerage firm is the Worst Realty. Their license number is 24. And the agent's name is Karen Smith, and her license number is 25. So the oldest agent on the face of the earth. She's a total Karen, and it's like the worst company you've ever worked for, right? Or ever worked with. So this is just one thing that I see a lot, is that you guys aren't checking the boxes for I represent the seller, or the other agent represents the seller and I'm representing the buyer, and getting all 4 of those boxes checked in every section is really important. Making sure that you're checking that the other agent is representing the seller, or the other brokerage is representing the seller, the other agent is representing the seller, and then you want to make sure that you're representing both as the brokerage and the buyer's agent. Just make sure all that's there. Look up the brokerage information, look up the listing, or the license numbers. It's the professional way to fill out a contract. If you're not doing it, bear with me, but I'm just going to say it's not professional. You need to put all that information in. You need to look up the other agent's address. You need to look, and a lot of escrow companies are requiring that. If it's not on the contract, they're kicking it back and saying they need an addendum. So just be aware of that. You do need to look all that information up and get it into the contract. I'm going to kick it back. If I see it, I will let you know that needs to get added in an addendum one way or another, most likely because I know escrow is going to ask for it. So I need you to get it in the file because I'm helping Robin out just a little bit on that piece of it. So just keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and get into section 3, the terms of the contract. I'm going to kind of go through some of this sort of a little quickly. If you have questions, don't hesitate to stop me and ask. But I only have a brief period of time. We can get in a deeper dive into some of this if you guys want to, but I wanted to just kind of go through. I used an example of just the last property that I closed. This was not our offer. This was just one that I typed up based on that property in Palm Springs, with a purchase price of $750. the close of escrow 45 days. I want to ask you guys where you're getting close of escrow days. How do you know what that number is? How do you guys figure that out? Does anybody have a guess? So by the client's needs? My number one answer to that is if it's cash, yes, it's how fast can the client and I get it done. If there's a lender, that's a question for the lender. I don't know how quickly we can close this escrow. It's going to be up to the lender. And I'm going to put, the way I do it is I ask the lender, I may do it in a phone conversation, and how many days do you need? And when they tell me, I'm going to follow it up with an email. Even if they don't reply back to it, I'm just going to follow it up with an email that shows that we had the conversation and that this is how many days you told me you need. So when I come asking for an ETA because the lender can't close, at least I have something that shows that I had the conversation, right? So if there's a loan involved, don't guess on that day. Make sure that you call the lender and have that conversation with them. Your expiration of offer, this one has come into play a lot. I've had a lot of people ask me, what should they put as their expiration of offer? And I will just tell you that as a listing agent, my attitude is if you make it expire at 12 o'clock the same day you give it to me, I'll get it to you when I get it to you. Like there's a very good chance I'm not going to be able to make that happen. And most real estate agents aren't. They're just not. You know what I mean? And so just be aware of that you may be cutting your nose off to spite your face by making it that short of a time frame. However, if you know another offer is coming in, then it does make sense to shorten that time frame to maybe at 24 hours, right? Maybe 48 hours. It really depends on the situation. And I would suggest that in each of those situations, you have a conversation with the lender, with the client, and have a conversation with me. Come talk to me. Come have a conversation with me about what that should look like. Or I'm sorry, not the lender. Come have a conversation with the client and come have a conversation with me about what that needs to look like, because it is a very strategic thing. And sometimes we want to leave it the full 3 days, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we want to shorten it, but shortening it too much can just put some pressure on that's unrealistic, and then your offer expires and you don't actually have a valid offer anymore. And then if there's a reason they don't want to deal with it, then it makes it just very simple. They just ignore it. So just be aware of that. Initial deposit. Go ahead.
Stephanie,
Yeah.
the other thing I would add to that is I always like to call the listing agent and find out what the availability of the seller is, because there's been times when I found out, oh, well, they're traveling in Europe and I can't reach them for 72 hours.
That's a really great point. She said that a lot of times she likes to call the agent and find out what the availability of the seller is, because because sometimes the seller's out of the country. I mean, when an offer comes in, the seller's always out of the country, right? They just left for a cruise and there's no connectivity for 2 weeks. So sometimes it's a good idea to reach out and have a conversation with the other side to ask about that, to ask what the availability of the seller is, to make sure that you're not asking for something unrealistic. I think that's a great point. This is, and you guys, this really is an art. It is not a science. There is not one answer. I had an agent call me the other day. He was writing his first offer and he called me and he was like, I just want to make sure they get it. And I'm like, we all want to make sure that all of them get it. And they don't. That's not how this works, right? So you have to come forward with the best possible offer. And when we come to price, I said, again, you have to come in with that price where you would feel okay if you lost it by $1,000, right? And so that's just make sure that when you're coming in with these offers, you're coming in with the very best terms that you can possibly put forward, right? You may get an opportunity to counter, but you may not. And so you just want to put that best offer forward in the first place. On the initial deposit on this one, I've got 3%. I am going to recommend that you guys are all asking for 3%. Do we all know why we ask for 3% and not 4%? Yep, it's liquidated damages. That's exactly why. The reason that hold on 1 second. Let me make sure the mic is hot for you. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
On an escrow standpoint, let's say the offer is 750,000, and then it's the contract, and then you increase the price or whatever, or even comes in less. The 22,500 is the initial deposit. However, when it's 3%, then escrow will ask for 3% of the sales price. That always comes into contention about how much to wire in. Buyers do. So we always look at the contract And if it says 3% of the sales price, we tell them 3% because you don't addendum.
Well, so
the
you want to
deposit.
look at that section 3D1. It actually says 3% of the purchase price, and it says percent number above is for calculation purposes and is not a contractual term.
Yeah.
The dollar amount is the dollar amount that would be owed. Even if a counter on the sale price of the house were to change, that 22.5 needs to be countered as well. And you need to add that into your counter so that you're making sure that everything equals what you want it to. And the reason, again, that we ask for the 3% is that that's the maximum that the seller is allowed to keep if the buyer does not close, if the buyer defaults for their own fault. That's the max amount they're allowed to close. So we always want the 3%, but we never want our clients to put all of the money in or 5% or more than that, because then that money, even though the seller's not entitled to it, it's tied up and both parties have to agree to release it. So if there's not an agreement, then you could have a challenge there. So that's, again, why this is not an exact science. And you may need to have either a conversation with the lender, you may need to talk to me, you may need to talk to Robin, and any of us, if we're not the right one, are going to guide you to the right place to go, right? So very good point. I think, Jeff, you could probably leave that on because I'm not hearing feedback anymore. And I'm not hearing myself in there. So, okay, so the next piece is, the next thing I want to talk about is D2, increased deposit. I get, oh, never mind. I get a lot of, we're working on it together. It's all good. Like air high five. So increased deposit. I've gotten some questions on this. Do I do an increased deposit? So there was a time in this business where we used to do increased deposits, and it was generally upon removal of contingencies. And this was a time where there was a very, very, very heavy seller's market. And it was 2006 to 2009 is when this was happening. And so what would happen is that the seller would accept your offer, and maybe the buyer could only put in 1% or 1.5%, then they would want the increased upon removal of contingencies. But more often what it was they wanted you to put an additional 10,000 in, or some other exorbitant amount that they were asking you to put in. What came up in that, though, is that the additional deposit wasn't included in the original liquidated damages clause. So now what you need to remember is if you do an additional increased deposit, then you need to sign an additional liquidated damages clause, but we really don't do it very often. So it's come up as to whether somebody should do it to make their offer stronger. It's absolutely a great way to make your offer stronger. So what does it do? Increased deposit. So again, what would happen is a lot of times you would have somebody that would, let me see, what it basically just, all that it does is it when you hear the term skin in the game, it makes the seller feel like that buyer has more skin in the game. It locks up more funds. I don't recommend it in most cases. There were times where we did it. It was just a way to make your offer stronger. This was a time where people were sleeping in tents in order to get new construction. So it was a very different time. And and what we've seen recently is a lot of buyers waiving inspections and all of those things. That wasn't happening back then, but they were putting additional funds into escrow. And some of it was that somebody would put 2.5% down and they had to do their additional 0.5% after close, just they needed to get some additional time, or they didn't want to put it all the way in. So you would negotiate that piece of it. We really don't use it very often, but I've been asked a lot about it lately because people confuse it for putting in the balance of your funds at the end of escrow. That's not what that is. This is if you were to put it in a little earlier than that. The balance that goes in like 5 days prior to close is all the way down in section F at the bottom there. Okay, so I've got the loan amount in there as 600,000. One other thing I'm seeing a lot is that if you've got a loan amount of 80%, make sure that it's actually 80% of the purchase price. This section, the math gets written wrong a lot because what people forget to do is deduct the initial deposit from the balance of the down payment. So the initial deposit and the balance of the down payment is your total down. So if you're doing a 20% loan, you'd put 3% down and then 17% 5 days prior to close, right? That gives you a total of 20% down, and the loan would be for 80. If those numbers aren't all right, then it's not going to jive in your contract and your number is going to come out wrong. And if it comes out wrong, don't just buzz past it. Make sure that you let me know, because escrow needs those numbers and the lender needs those numbers in order to make everything work. Otherwise, again, they're going to ask you to do an addendum. So I know we've caught it a couple times with a few people where you've called me and asked me the question beforehand and we've been able to fix it. So that's all worked out well. Any questions on that section? I feel like this is the easy part. Okay, go ahead. Hold on. Let me get the mic for you. Yep.
Okay, so where it says the fixed rate, initial adjustable rate.
Oh, thank
and
you.
It says not to exceed 5.75%.
Yes.
If I am the
Thank you for not buzzing past that.
seller, okay, wouldn't I want to change that to prevailing rate to make it a little more
So
tight for the seller to have a buyer who just doesn't walk if they didn't qualify? I'm there based on their income.
I like your question. Prevailing rate is not a good term. It's an erroneous term. Prevailing rate means nothing. My prevailing rate is different than your prevailing rate, is different than her prevailing rate, is different than his prevailing rate.
So I used to write qualifying rate.
We used to write a lot of things, and I used to write best prevailing rate, and we don't do that anymore. So here's, again, this is the answer, and I'm glad you made me go back, because this is another conversation that you and I cannot fill this out. We cannot fill this out without a conversation with the lender. This cannot be completed properly. And if you don't fill this in and you're getting a loan and you put nothing in there, you are leaving your client exposed. Because let's just say tomorrow somebody bombs something and interest rates go up to 10%, your client is now stuck because you didn't write anything in there, right? So the best thing to do is to call the lender and have a conversation about what the real number is that should be in there, so that there's a true number that your client qualifies for. If something happens and it goes up, they can still take the loan, but they technically don't have to. It gives them that out that if that's the number that makes it really uncomfortable for them, then we don't want to go above that. And the only way you're going to know that number is by having a conversation with the lender. So
let's say I'm repping the seller and I want to tie the buyer in on it. Should I not
so
put prevailing or qualifying?
But here's the thing. Here's the deal. I agree with you in that you can lock the buyer in, but here's what I want to know as the buyer, as the seller's agent, and as the seller. I want to know what they qualify for. I want to know what the real number is that they're able to qualify for, because if that number is crazy high, then I know they're already stretching it, right? I know that the loan that they're getting, I know that there's a problem. There's a reason why they're being charged so much. And I know that it's probably tight margins. If it just says best prevailing rate, that's no information for me. So I am going to urge you guys, as you're writing these offers for your buyers and there's a loan involved, call the lender. Ask them, what rate should it not exceed? How many points do I need to put in? We weren't even talking points 2-3 years ago. Like, we hadn't had that conversation in 10 years. Now we've been talking points again. Sometimes, probably not in today's market, but a couple months ago we were talking points, and we were talking buy downs, and we were talking sellers offering concessions for that stuff. So that's all a part of putting all of this in here. It can also help the seller to know, you know what, I see that they may have to pay 2 points. I want the price to go up, but I'll buy the points down. It helps the seller to know what those terms are that they need to negotiate on. And that's also why it's not a bad idea when you get an offer like this to put it in front of your lender, put it in front of Sean, let her take a look at it and tell you what are some areas that might need to be strengthened. That's a great conversation. And again, when I joked that I told Craig to call Robin, because anytime you guys call me with a Robin question, with an escrow question, I either call her or I tell you to. Right? Anytime you guys call me with a lender question, I either call Sean or I tell you to. You don't have to have all the answers. And I've been saying that more and more to agents. I keep hearing people say, you know what, that made me feel a lot better. Like, thank you for telling me that. You're not expected to. The lenders have the loan answers, right? Title has the title answers. Escrow has the escrow answers. Escrow has all the answers, but she also has a lot of fingers to point in the right directions. And then she just picks up the phone and calls them and doesn't tell you that it's just solved, right? So she's the true man behind the green curtain. But it's a very, very good point that if you want to write a solid offer, it's good to have this information in there and just be as upfront as possible. And it's good for you as a seller, as the listing agent, that if you get an offer with one of these that's filled out and one of them that's not, call the other agent back and say, I need your loan information before I'm presenting this to my seller. Get your lender to send me something in writing saying what the terms should be, because you didn't complete it correctly. Do we always do that? No, we've been riding fast and loose for a really long time, but things are changing and we've got to be practitioners of this business now and be very careful about the contracts we're writing. There are ways that we can tighten this up a whole lot more than we have. I do get what you're saying, but again, this is the conversation that if I get one of these and I'm not liking it, I also wanted to, not only do I want to talk to my lender to see how we should tighten it up, I want to talk to their lender. And in some cases, I've had Sean call the other lender. Sean wasn't even on the transaction. I said, I don't know this. I was like, you just told me a bunch of great stuff to say. I can't regurgitate it. Can you please call them and have this conversation and tell me? And she called me back. And one time she called me back and said, move forward. Another time she called me back and said, run and don't look back. And those were the two actions that I took. So just be aware, like, you don't have to have all those answers and know everything. You can call the lender and say, hey, this is the contract we've got. What do you think about this? And they can also help you with knowing if that lender's pre-approval letter is worth the paper it's written on. That's helpful too, because sometimes that doesn't get you very far, right? Okay, any other questions on that first section? Time-wise, okay. Okay, so let's go now. So that was what we just went through. Why is my screen locked? Hold on, guys. Oh, that's because you're, it's your screen, not mine. Okay, good thing I look cute today. Okay. I'm just kidding. Okay. Okay. So on this particular offer, I've got in section G1 at the top, I've got in written a credit to the buyer for 22.5. That is 3% of the purchase price. I've written that in here because I've had a couple recently. Actually, you had one just yesterday where they were asking for credit back. I also put this in here because this may be the section where you begin to write your commission credit. I don't know yet. We're not there yet, but this may be the section where that happens. I just wanted to draw attention to it and also just point out that if this buyer is asking the seller for any credit, whether it be for closing costs or whatever it is, this is the section where you would write that in. I did hear something, and I'm sad that Sean's not here with us today because I did hear something that Fannie and Freddie just released new guidelines. And I don't even know if I want to say it out loud because I'm not sure. I haven't verified it yet, but I heard they released guidelines that buyer's agent commission will not be held against the agent, against the buyer, like that they're making that change, that it will not be held against the buyer. I have not. So I just want to verify it before I've only gotten it from one source. And if it doesn't come up on the national news, then I generally know it might not be true. So I want to verify that before I hear it, but I feel like that may be coming at some point. It would be really great if it did, but I feel like it's too soon for it to be true. The next section down that I want, G2, additional finance terms. This is where you could put some of those additional things that we were talking about. G3, seller agrees to pay buyers, the obligation of buyers to compensate buyer broker under a separate agreement. Again, we've talked about this in classes that we've done. I've like beat this piece up to death. This is going to be the section that we're all going to be checking in a very short period of time. And it only applies if you have a buyer representation agreement, a BRBC with the client. If you don't have that, you cannot check this box. And it actually says that right on the SPBB. If you were going to attach it, it says if you don't have a buyer representation agreement, do not use this form. Most of you are not changing most of the dates on this, and it's been working fine for you. So the reason I share that is that most of the dates that are in section, let's see, section H all the way down, you guys are all leaving alone. And the reason I share that is because it's been working for you. So you've been able to get loan approval in 17 days. You've been able to get all of the things you've needed, HOA docs. Like, I'm not hearing that the BIA is way backed up or HOA docs are a giant pain in the, they always have been and they always will be, but they're no worse than they have been. So it's not like there's anything specific that you guys need to be adjusting on the dates on these unless you know something specific. And so let's go ahead and scroll down here because I think most of what you guys have been putting in here has been fine. Yeah, we don't need to expand those. So let's go to the next page. I did show on section P at the very top of the next page. I just included all of the items that are in the property. You guys are doing a pretty good job with this, but just make sure that you take a good look around and make sure you're including everything. I always like to just share a quick story that I had a client walk through a house and they made a decision to buy it. And we got out in the front driveway and I said, did you guys realize there were no mirrors in the bathrooms? And they like both looked at me and went, no. And I'm like, there's a lot left to do in that house, right? And so it's just always like, sometimes when we're walking through, we don't always notice the first go around how much might be there or might not be there, but just take a quick look around and make sure you're checking off the right things. Make sure that if there is a wine refrigerator that you're including it, and that you need that for your home warranty too. So it's a good time to check for all of those things as well, when you're calculating the price of your home warranty. Natural NHD. One thing that I wanted to mention on NHD is I see some of you guys are putting my NHD in. Just know, while they are joined forces, we really only truly get credit on NHD if you select better NHD. I will say most people don't have a problem with it. Most people don't have a problem with you writing in better NHD. I think of all the things, that's the last thing they're going to counter. Unless someone specifically says they already have NHD ordered, then you might have an issue. Again, that's a good conversation to have with the agent on the other side beforehand. But we are having a little issue with the section Q2 and Q3. This used to be where I would write physical home inspection and wood destroying pest. And it won't, one of them is like changed to a drop down, and you can only select this fire, whatever the wildfire disclosure form. It's not the regular one, it's something else. It's like it's another form. So what we're having to do is either move physical home inspection or wood destroying pest down to the bottom. On this one, I put wood destroying pest report up at the top and asked the seller to pay for it, and down towards the bottom is where I included what section Q16 is where I put the physical home inspection, just so that you guys can see that's where I put those two. It's not just a sky slope issue. This is actually a actual zip forms has changed the form, and I can't make an edit to it the way I normally would. So we'll keep working on that, but just know that that's why you see the change in the templates. I've asked the seller in this offer to pay for the smoke alarms, government required point of sale inspection reports. That is, if you're on Indian land, you want to make sure that that box is checked, because that's going to be the BIA reports that are required. So make sure that on section Q5 that you have that checked. Government required point of sale corrective is generally not an issue, unless maybe, like I want to say I haven't seen it unless maybe you get into a really old property. So if you have something pre-1950, then let's chat about it if you need to check that box. But in most cases, we don't. I have recently had some issues with agents asking me if they need to check the county transfer or the city transfer boxes, and I have said no, and then it has come back to bite them in the rear. We used to just write if applicable, but you can't do that next to them anymore. So my suggestion is now to check that the seller is going to pay for them, both of them, unless. So was I, but the last 2 times I've told somebody not to do it. Yeah, and maybe, and if it's working for you, great. Feel free to do it the way you're doing it. But I'm just going to say, to be safe, I would check the boxes. If it's not applicable, it doesn't apply, right? If the seller really wants to counter it out, like, fine, we'll do an addendum if we really need to, or we'll do a counter if we really need to. But it is, you're right. But I think it was in Riverside County. And who was it? Julian just had, no, okay, there's nothing in Riverside County. Okay, so we're safe to not check that box.
That was in La Quinta, Laguna de La Paz.
It was in La Quinta de La Paz, he just
Elaine
said.
Stewart. Yeah.
And which?
Huh? It was the move your cursor. It was the
County or city?
It was the county transfer tax,
In La Quinta?
So
that's crazy.
But then I had the box checked, each to pay their own fees. And then Elaine also agreed with me. She's like, that's fine. But escrow was the one that was being.
I wonder if escrow just padded it in.
Well, escrow said that they needed us to do an ADM one to make clear that seller and buyer were going to pay their own share. And we were like, why? You know.
Robin is shaking her head right now. That would not happen
Robin?
with Josh, with JTE,
Oh, Robin,
our escrow
Robin.
officer.
Yeah.
She's shaking her head. That would not happen with JTE.
No, it wouldn't happen with Gina or anybody else. But you know, this is so typical of Foresight. Foresight does that a lot. Foresight.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on. The HOA prep and cert fees, or the HOA prep fee is by the seller and cert fee is by the buyer by default. The HOA transfer fee, I generally check the box for the seller. Private transfer fee is automatically the seller unless somebody else selects it. And then you can see I put the physical home inspection down there. I wanted to mention on item Q18 for the home warranty, make sure when you guys are doing that, if you're using Old Republic Home Protection, make sure that you do the platinum plan, or you can pick any plan you want. I suggest the platinum plan, but that's not always in the cards. And it's not always in the budget of what you're asking for. But I generally write in the platinum plan with CRES. The important part here is with CRES. Make sure you put with CRES at the end of that, because that gives them a 13-month instead of a 12-month plan. And it also gives you that coverage on your E&O deductible that it will reduce your deductible significantly. So it's very, very beneficial. I don't remember. It's an type of insurance, and not all I've worked for a brokerage that did not qualify for CRES because they didn't have an E&O that would allow the qualification. Ours does, so we're able to get the E&O reduction. That's the really big thing. It's great that the client gets an extra month, but you getting a significant savings. It could be thousands of dollars if you ever had an E&O claim.
I think it's like a $50,000 policy that you receive as an agent, basically, from it. I believe it's
no,
it's something huge.
It's a percentage of your of your deductible that they will cover. Right. They will basically give you a check for. Yeah. And then you can see under our other terms, I have wood destroying pest inspection shall be completed by Fraser Pest Control, because this doesn't allow us to specify who that is up at the top anymore. So I always make sure that I specify who that is. But I want to stop real quick. All of that said, what I just went over in this second page with you is how I want you to write the offer. But I had an agent the other day come to me and say, hey, I used the template. It was great. Everything was awesome. I thought it was so simple. And then the agent on the other side chose another offer because they said the other one was cleaner. What could I have done? And I went through the offer and I looked at it. And to be honest, it was pretty clean. Like there was a couple things they did ask for $5,000 in closing costs, but they raised the price $5,000. They actually were getting a VA loan and they put $5,000 cash in to make it so that you could see they were putting some cash down on it. And there weren't a lot of other terms, but and I have Robin sitting here, so I'm being very careful with my words, but I want you guys to understand we need you to get the transaction. We definitely need you to get the escrow, but we want you to get the transaction and we want your client to get the deal, right? And so in some cases, if you know there's another offer coming in, or you know that there's other competition or there are other factors, you may need to loosen some things up a little bit, and you may need to write seller's choice in a couple places. I will tell you the one that they probably will never counter you on unless they really have done the work done in advance is NHD. They won't counter you on that. So I suggest you write in better NHD on all of them. Escrow and title can be tough sometimes. The good news is, and the good news that I've had is
Josh
that every time.
Sorry,
sorry, I wasn't looking at you. Go ahead.
So I was just going to say, so what I do is whenever I personally go to write an offer to someone, I call the agent to start forming that relationship then. And I say, so what exactly have you done pre this? Because we already have pulled our title on our listings. Who are you using for title? And I ask them specifically for their terms. And I kind of verbally negotiate all of this stuff. So like if I'm doing a flip, you know what? We'll pay for all of the title insurance. We'll pay for all the HOA transfer fees. We'll pay for all of this so that I can get the deal. If you're coming in under on a price, it's really great to call and start the conversation then and just kind of, look, we're on the same team. We both want the same thing. I want the house. My clients want the house. Your clients want to get rid of the house. What specifics do you need from me that I can assist you with? So that we just have a one shot and we're not sitting here doing counters back and forth and we're all up all night stressed and worried about everything. Like, let's just make this easy. And they literally will start laughing on the phone and they're like, oh my God, this is going to be the easiest thing possible. These are what I need.
Exactly. And I just want to say that's exactly where I was just going.
Oh, sorry.
Suggestion, no, it's all okay. That's great. It's wonderful because my suggestion is that you pick up the phone and have a conversation. You notice that he did not say he texted. He did not say he emailed the agent. You have to pick up the phone. This is where the relationships that you build with other real estate agents will get you the deal. Yep. It will get the deal done more often than not. Yep. And if they know you a hot mess, it will get you out of the deal every time too, right? If they've done one with you before and it was a disaster, go ahead.
Yeah. I want to add also for the newcomers, I'm telling you, the relationship is so important. That's why reputation in the desert is very important. You don't want to piss off any agent. And of course, there are some agents who you just, they're never happy, but most of the agents here, when you have a conversation with them, like what Josh Pringle said, that half your battle is won when you know the agent you're working with. I've had so many times they will have 5, 6 offers, and the agent will say, I want to work with you, Julian, because I know you're good for the money. I know your lender is good, and whatever you say, you deliver. And I'm telling you, suddenly those terms that we just talked about, yeah, they're
Don't
great,
matter.
but a majority of it is like that relationship that you build with the agent, and I'm working on one right now in Pinyon Pines, and guess what? I don't know her, but my TC knows her. So now I have a relationship with this agent through my TC. And so there's so many variables when you're writing up an offer. It's very important to be aware of all the different variables. And that way, I heard what you said, Stephanie. I want my offer to be accepted, but there's strategies. There's a lot of variables in play here,
It is.
and you
And
gotta
that's
take
why, like,
advantage
whenever
of
you,
them,
sorry. And after
Um,
you show a property, that's why it's always important to call and give the feedback
correct.
to the agent. And I know it's a pain
Correct.
in the butt, but guess what? You just started forming a relationship with someone because no one else does that. No one else calls and says, I showed your property and this is what my client thought of it.
Right, and if
Right.
you're the
Nobody does it.
if you're the listing agent, it's important to follow up with the showings, because then you show the buyer's agent that you care. I've had buyer's agents call me back and text me back and say, Julian, not many people do this. Thank you for even checking with me to let me know what you thought about what my buyer had to say about the home. I say, of course, I want to get some feedback. I want to get feedback from your buyer. So
And
All
then you
right, I
just
only have
started
10
forming a
minutes. I only have
relationship.
10 minutes
Yeah.
left, guys,
Sorry.
so I need
I
to
love
keep
it,
going,
Stephanie. I
but
love it. I just love
I
it.
do love your
I
feedback.
love it. I love it.
I do want to also mention on here that I've got the home warranty plan. I calculated what it would have been for my listing, and it was 1,160 to cover everything under the platinum plan. I want to make you guys aware that some prices have gone up, not just with Old Republic. Everybody's prices have gone up. The grocery store's prices have gone up. Armando's prices have gone up. Home warranty prices have gone up. I think even the dog cleaning, it used to be 100 to get the teeth cleaned. Now it's 130. Everything has gone up there. So just make sure you're calculating it properly, and know that you don't always have to ask for the full amount. Maybe the buyer wants to kick in a couple $100s, and they can always do that. So maybe you negotiate that price with the buyer and have that conversation first before you speak. Let me get you a speaker.
I need to know. Picking up that amount, or is the buyer knowing they're gonna have to kick in a couple $100?
Right.
We can't pull it out of the air. And a lot of times when we're doing CDs for buyer's loans, we don't disclose that in the beginning, the additional cost of the home warranty. So the agent ends up paying for it, but it's just a conversation you have to.
And that's why.
Exactly.
That's why. Because they didn't send an email to escrow saying the buyer's picking up the extra 200. That's exactly why. I've even had somebody come to me after close of escrow and say, oh, we forgot to pay it. Now what do we do? And I had to call the seller, and it was like, and of course he's like, you want to split it with me? So what did I end up doing? It's what you do. So just
I've
don't put
padded it
yourself in those
sometimes.
positions. Yeah,
I've
don't
padded
put.
it sometimes with an extra like $200 just in case.
Yeah, but be careful. If you're padding it with an extra $200, that may be the difference between your offer getting accepted and not.
Right.
So I think you guys need to
Absolutely.
take a look at that and make sure. And again, come have the conversation. So let me just give you a little role play real quick. Here's how it's going to go. If I'm writing an offer on Robin's listing, I call Robin and I'm like, hey, Robin, this is Steph. I've got an offer that I'm writing up for you right now on 123 Main Street. Normally I like to use Robin Mormon at Joshua Tree Escrow, and I like First American, and I work with Catherine. How do you feel about those? I don't go in like, hey, I really want it. My broker would like it if I don't do that. I'm like, this is who I use. How do you feel? Because if they don't have a problem with it, it may just be okay, right? They may be like, oh, I love Robin. Great, right? And then we just write her into the contract, no issue. I just go in like I know what I'm doing, and I don't know, I don't walk with heavy feet, but at the same time, like you just kind of go in like you know what you're talking about. People don't question you as much. But if you just go in with that, this is who I like to use. How do you feel about that? Make sure that they're good with it, because here's the other thing. If you write seller's choice on an offer, you write on my listing, and I have to counter any other term, I'm going to clarify every single service that I'm going to use. I'm going to say Joshua escrow will be Joshua Tree Escrow, Robin Mormon, title will be First American, Catherine Robertson. I'm going to give you the list of all of those. The reason for that is because seller's choice, I don't want somebody to come back and say that it was your choice of who we used. I want everybody, if I'm representing the seller and I get an offer that says seller's choice, I'm going to counter back, or if I'm countering, I'll counter back with, like, let's say I'm countering on any other term, I'll counter back with who all the services are. So the seller has, or the buyer has now accepted them and agreed to them. So they can't come back and say, well, it was your termite company. It was your home inspector. It was your,
If it's seller's choice, I'll do it on the page 16 and I'll clarify who the escrow and the title are.
ooh, I love you.
Mhm.
Yeah, not everybody does that.
I know.
She
Um,
clarifies. If it's not
clarify
clarified, she clarifies on page 16 who's doing what. It's another great reason to use JTE. I love it. Okay, great. Okay, so with just a few more minutes left, couple last things that I want to get into. This next page, there's not a lot for us to do on the rest of the pages, but this next section 4, just make sure that you read through it. If any of these addenda or disclosures apply, make sure that you get them included in the transaction. In that whole section 4, everything that you see there, make sure they're there. The last thing that I want to touch base on is we're going to skip a couple pages because I don't have time to go through the whole thing with you today, but I think this one is the one that's coming up the most, that we're seeing the most. And it's going to be towards the back of the contract. It is going to be page 11 of the purchase agreement. And it's going to be the first section at the top is going to be 14E. So notice to buyer or seller to perform at the very top. So here's, as you're representing a seller, or even if you're repping a buyer and a seller's not moving forward and doing what they're supposed to do, what I want to get you guys used to is how to use the notice to perform and the demand to close escrow in order to move the transaction along, right? So there's these 2 little paragraphs. I want you guys to know this. Every time you guys call me and ask me a question about these 2 documents, I pull this page up every time. I never, ever guess at how this works. On Friday, I had an agent call me and say, all contingencies are removed. I think I can just do the demand to close escrow. I don't think I need a notice to perform. And I was like, I don't think you do either, but I want to read that section one more time before I say yes. You got to wait till I get to a place where I can pull over and pull up that section of the contract. And it was true. She was able to do the demand to close without doing the notice to perform. But what you need to know is if you do them wrong, you have voided documents that are no good, and it's like you didn't send them, right? So you can't send the notice to perform and the demand to close at the same time. If you do, both are void. Neither one applies. It's not like the demand to, if you needed to send the notice to perform first, it's not like you sent the notice to perform and the time frame starts. It's like you sent nothing. So you have to start all over again. So on the notice to perform, if let's say a contingency hasn't been removed or HOA docs aren't there or whatever the thing is, like HOA docs is probably not a great example because we know that's always a problem. So notice to buyer to perform or notice to seller to perform shall be in writing, signed by the applicable buyer or seller, and give the party at least 2 days after delivery or until the time specified in the agreement to take the applicable action. So what this means, when you guys get the notice, when you guys go to fill out the notice to perform, like let's say you're going to do it, and you're like, okay, I'm ready, I'm going to do it, and you get in there and it says 2 days, that it gives them 2 days to respond, and let's just say you decide you want to change it to 1 day, you have a voided document. It's already contractually 2 days in the agreement, according to what's in the contract. So you can't change it later. If you were going to change it, you needed to change it in the purchase agreement. You would have to edit that or add an addendum and make an edit to the days that are allowed. So because it's already negotiated, you can't change it in that contract, in the notice to perform, even though there's a little space, there's like a checkbox and it looks like it'd be really easy to make it 1 day. You can't do that. So it gives them 2 days. After that's done, the next thing that you need to give is the demand to close. So I want you to go down to paragraph G, demand to close escrow. Before the buyer or seller may cancel this agreement for failure of the other party to close escrow, pursuant to the agreement, buyer or seller must first deliver to the other party a demand to close escrow, car form DCE. The DCE shall be signed by the applicable buyer or seller and give the party at least 3 days after close of escrow to get the escrow closed. I'm sorry, give the party at least 3 days after delivery to close the escrow. Demand to close escrow may not be delivered any more than 3 days prior. So that's the other part I want to get into with you guys, is that when are you allowed to send these forms? Both of the forms say that you can't send them more than 48 or 72 hours earlier than they're due. So what that means is that you can send them so that they're due on the day the contingency would be up, if that makes sense. So let's say you're going to do a notice to perform for an inspection contingency, right? 17 days is up. You get a little like you're feeling weird, right? You haven't gotten a notice to perform. You haven't even gotten a copy of the home inspection. You're not getting any calls back or responses back from the other agent. So what do? On the 15th day, every time I'm going to suggest you do a notice to perform, so that on the 17th day, you're able to now do your demand to close and go ahead and move on and get this thing canceled, right? Move it towards getting canceled. Right. So, and when you guys come to me with a challenge, when you tell me that you've got a buyer that their funds have not come yet, and we don't know what we're going to do, we're supposed to close on Friday and it's not going to happen. Well, we know that if you get that, if the notice to perform doesn't come on Friday, if it hasn't come like on Wednesday so that it's due on Friday, if they're not doing that to you, then when you get the notice to perform on Friday, you're going to have 5 more business days to complete that transaction. So when you guys come to me and you're like, oh my God, my client can't close on Friday, I don't know what we're going to do. They're going to send us a cancellation. No, they're not. They have to send you a notice to perform and a demand to close. You got 5 days and you have the weekend now too. So you got 7. So tell them to get moving, right? So that you have that little bit of leeway in there. But if you want to make sure you're locking it up, send the notice to perform 2 days early. Send the demand to close 3 days before that close of escrow is due. You can't send it prior to the agreed upon close date, right? For the demand to close. And you can't send it more than 3 days, 2 days prior for the agreed upon action that they're supposed to take for the notice to perform. Does all that make sense? Oh, go ahead, Julian. Unmute yourself.
Oh no, I just wanted to, I just put it in chat that it's important that I don't know whether we have enough time, but to cover paragraph 29 and 31 on page 14 of the RPA, when you send it via DocuSign, AuthentiSign, or any other sign, it gives an option to the buyer to initial it, and if they're reading what they're initialing, and some clients do, some clients don't, but those that actually read it, they will actually call and they'll say, what am I initialing here again? Because I have to initial it. So I wanted you to touch on that, Stephanie.
Sure, he's referring to the liquidated damages and arbitration clauses. So there is a way, and I don't know if we're doing it anymore, but there used to be a way, the old DocuSign, you could make those sections optional, and you're supposed to. The problem is when you do it, the client never clicks them, and you never get the signed document back right. I feel like we don't have that.
You drag and drop the initials on DocuSign over the initials. That way they are forced to sign it.
Okay. That's what we've been doing, but he's not wrong. We really need to have an individual conversation. Correct. And this is why DigiSign is so dangerous. Do I use it every day? Yes, but you have to, like, that, with that tool comes great responsibility, because you're not sitting in front of the client signing the papers the way you used to. And we really do need to explain to them what the liquidated damages and the arbitration clauses are and why they're agreeing to it. The arbitration clause, as far as I'm concerned, the way I explain it to clients is that it's a way of keeping the cost of business down. It's also the way of having other real estate professionals presiding over these conversations as opposed to just some judge. It's people that understand real estate that are dealing with it, and it helps to keep costs down. That's generally why we do it. The only people that generally argue with me on that are attorneys. They never want to sign the arbitration clause, and that's okay. Like, that's how they roll. Liquidated damages clauses, that protects the buyer. So Mr. Buyer, the reason why you should sign this, and the reason why I suggest you sign this box, is because what this does is it limits the amount of funds that the seller could keep if you were to just, let's say you just decided the day before close of escrow, I don't want to do this anymore, right? You know you're going to walk away from your deposit. This stops them from being able to keep more than 3%. And so it's recommended that the buyer initial it. If the buyer initials it and the seller doesn't, you do not have a completed contract until this is agreed upon, both of these sections. If one initials and the other won't, there needs to be a counter or an addendum saying that the other is either taken out or one is put in. Both have to agree. You can't have one or the other, or you don't have a valid contract. That's something to be aware of. One other thing I want to get into real quick is escalation clauses. I've been hearing a lot about them lately. I am very familiar with them. I am not a fan of using them without extreme caution. And I say that because most agents don't know how they work. I will say that the number one reason I don't like them is that in the state of California, and I can't really fully, I have not passed the bar, so I can't fully explain this, but I do know that in the state of California, 2 escalation clauses cancel each other out. So if you make an offer with an escalation clause and another agent makes an offer with an escalation clause, the terms don't even matter. They're both canceled out and they're now void. What normally happens, and John and I've had this conversation, what normally happens is that the agent on the listing agent will counter you back with an actual price and we'll have you sign that counter, and now you're the one that they move forward with, right? And that's how I'm going to do it every time. If you ever get an escalation agreement, never end the counter situation with signing that escalation agreement. You counter that escalation agreement with a counter that has the actual price you want the person to pay, and you have them sign that. That is the only way that I'm okay with it. I almost don't want to say allow, because there's 2 other people that help make those decisions, but that's the only way I'm okay with it. And I don't even have the escalation form that we have as a brokerage on our Sky Slope, because I don't want it accessible to anyone without talking to me first. If you're going to do an escalation clause, you have to have a conversation with me or John or Ben first, because there are certain things that have to be in play, or you are exposing yourself and me, and I'm not okay with it, like in a way that's very serious. So just be aware of that. I'm not trying to be scary, but it is scary. It is very scary, and it could put you in a very bad position. So just please, if you're going to use an escalation clause, please have a conversation with me or John or Ben first, so that we know what's going on and are aware of it. Again, I know that was a lot of information in a very short period of time, but I hope that some of those little tips kind of helped you. I am going to continue to sort of keep my eyes on our contracts and see where I see challenges, where I see you guys are having successes, and like where the strong contracts are coming in as well. And I'll make sure that we get that information out in front of you guys. Let's see. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, May 15th at 11 a.m. I will be fresh back from the CAR spring meetings in Sacramento. So I'm sure one of the big things I want to do while I'm there is sit on some of the forms meetings, if I can catch them. I really want to hear about what the changes are they're making with the forms and what's happening there. So I'm sure it'll be lots of good information that I'll have for you at that next sales meeting. I suggest you not miss it. Can I ask for a little feedback on the Zoom today? Did you guys feel like this was better than the last meeting we had? Okay, good. I know it was a little painful for you guys, so I'm glad it was better. I will say I would love to see more of you in the office, because there's only a couple of us here today. So as wonderful it is to see all of you on Zoom, it would be great to see you guys in the office too. So maybe the next meeting we'll do, I'll host something with some food, so we'll get you guys in here. All right. So Robin's bringing food.
Spring rolls,
Yep. Spring rolls. I know we had spring rolls for lunch yesterday. They were so good. Okay. All right, you guys. Any upcoming listings or needs or wants anybody wants to share before we go? I feel like I'm like on the Brady Bunch when I look up there, and I'm like looking up in the corners. Okay. All right. You guys have a great rest of your week. Reach out to us if there's anything we can do for you. We're here and happy to help. All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.